want me to tell you the story of my life?
Like I said, that's what I do. I interview people. I'm a collector of lives.
Welcome to Table Talk. I'm Heath, and I'll be your host. This is the show where I go one-on-one with a creator, author, illustrator, publisher, or other mover and shaker in the world of tabletop games, video games, TV, movies, or any other area of the geekverse.
You followed me here, didn't you?
Yeah, I suppose I did. You seem very interesting. This is where you live?
Yes, this is my home. Welcome.
So, what do you do?
I'm a vampire.
That's something I haven't heard before.
Guests have included individuals such as Lou Anders, the author of the Thrones and Bones fantasy novels, creator and publisher of the Norengard RPG, and even the author of Star Wars, A Pirate's Price.
Bond. James Bond.
Well, not James Bond. I haven't gotten to talk to him yet, but maybe sometime in the future. But how about Brian Colin, the creator of the vast, grim, dark horror RPG and sculptor of the world of Revelo monster busts? Mark Tassin, the creator of the world of Italtus, head of Mechanical Muse, and the head developer of the new Cool Name RPG. I've spoken with Jeff Engelstein, game designer and former commentator on the Dice Tower. He and I got deep into the statistics, probability, and psychological function of dice in tabletop games. Jamie Stegmaier, the founder of Stonemaier Games and crowdfunder extraordinaire. He's published many hit board games like Scythe and Wingspan. I've spoken with Sydney Engelstein from Indie Boards and Cards to talk about what it really takes to publish a board game in today's environment and what it would take for you to get published if you were trying to get a publisher for your board game. I've spoken with Ajit George about game writing, education, and his contribution to Van Richter's Guide to Ravenloft and his development of the Journey Through the Radiant Citadel Dungeons & Dragons book. Let's see, who else have I spoken to?
I am Hela, Odin's firstborn, commander of the legions of Asgard, the rightful heir to the throne, and the goddess of death.
Yes, I really appreciate her taking the time to speak with me. That was a great interview. I've also spoken with Kamran Pasha, writer and novelist who's been working in Hollywood for over 20 years. His projects have included Emmy and Golden Globe nominated Sleeper Cell, Kings, Nikita, and Roswell, New Mexico. His analysis and commentary have been very popular on YouTube. I've gotten to speak with Paul Shadow, the former network executive, who has made quite a splash here on YouTube with his reaction videos to current movies and films. He and I discussed the status of independent film and web productions online today. Brianna da Silva is a reoccurring guest on the show, and a very popular one at that. She's an author and director, and she was also the co-writer of the cultist comedy web show that's here on the channel. She and I regularly meet to study and analyze stories. I've also gotten to speak with of the Positive Fandom channel. She's an ally in our effort to be a positive and constructive force in the geekverse. Are you ready? Have you got your drink? Are you all settled in? You might want to buckle up because it could be a wild ride. We're about to explore the worlds of tabletop gaming, sci-fi, fantasy, and the geekverse through the eyes of those who are making things happen.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
It's time for Table Talk. Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and it is so good to see you here on Table Talk. We are here. We're going to be talking about the story structure of the fall tonight. And I know we are a little bit late, but we are going to have Brianna da Silva on. She is here and ready to jump on. She's one of everyone's favorite guests and, of course, our resident badass. But we are also waiting for Cameron. Cameron's not here yet, but Brianna and I decided we were just going to go ahead and begin. We've got lots of things to talk about on this subject. She and I actually had a pre-conversation on this subject today for about 2 hours in preparation for this discussion today. And then I spent about another hour working on notes and things like that. So there's a lot to say on this subject. So like I said, we might as well go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring on Brianna, and then Cameron will get here when he gets here. So welcome, Brianna and Resident Badass.
Hi. If you'll notice, I'm not in my normal location. That's because I'm at my mom's house. I got stranded here kind of because of the snowstorm. Sort of, kind of. Mainly, I just didn't want to drive in the snow. So, yay.
That's Colorado, right?
Yeah, that's Colorado for you.
All right. So we are talking about the story structure of the fall. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about, it's probably good to talk about terminology first.
Yes.
Actually, because
yes.
that was
well,
actually
I wish Cameron was here for this part as well, but that's okay.
Yeah, I know. So we might have to like hit the highlights when he comes in. But okay, let's then. I've got my notes up about how this conversation can fit within the broader conversation that we're having here on the channel. So let me bring up these notes. This is modified from last time we had Doug Burton on here. So this is the notes that I had, and this is just a hypothesis. None of this is complete yet.
Saying this is it.
Yeah, this is just the hypothesis kind of that I've been working under and having these conversations under. This is a theory of story structures and basic categorization. And so we're searching out here archetypical story structures, and we could certainly get into detail about what that means. We probably will. Like Brianna and I also made a long list of topics that we need to discuss specifically in addition. So there's that. But we talked about, okay, I'm hypothesizing that maybe there are 6 to 8 archetypical story structures, and there's no particular reason for 6 to 8, other than we had a discussion with Maxwell Alexander Drake, which I realized this afternoon that Brianna has never actually spoken with. But on previous episodes, especially of General Geekdom, Maxwell Alexander Drake, who is the author of books such as Dynamic Story Creation. And I saw him at Gen Con, and he had absolutely fantastic presentations on it. We were talking about, we brought up the question, is it possible to distill all stories into some general theory?
Mm-hmm.
And his response I thought was really good, and it's one that I agree with. He said that possibly. He said that maybe you could do that you could generalize all stories to some type of general theory, but only at the expense of explanatory power, which seems to be the case with most theories. That if we came up with some type of, but here's one theory that I've got that explains all stories, it might not actually explain very much.
Right. It's like if you're describing everything, you're kind of describing nothing.
You're describing nothing.
Right.
But on the other hand, if you say, yes, I've got theories of archetypical story structures, I've got 68 of them, maybe you need to do some more generalization. So that you're too diverse. Like there are things you could clump together and come up with a distilled essence. So the theory then is perhaps 6 to 8, and we had the hero's journey, which we hypothesized is archetypically masculine, and this one has definitely had the most work done and we can come with a lot of structure on what it actually means to go through the hero's journey. And then last episode, we went through the Heroine's Labyrinth with Doug Burton, which I thought was fantastic because previously we had hypothesized that Beauty and the Beast, we hadn't actually studied this in great detail,
right?
But the Beauty and the Beast was an archetypically feminine structure. And then he came in with the Heroine's Labyrinth, which basically subsumed Beauty and the Beast and provided an even higher level structure for that. So putting the Heroine's Labyrinth, as he understood it, on the same level as the hero's journey. And he's going to come back and talk about that. And Brianna's going to talk about that too. Maybe in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk more about what happened with Doug Burton. That was a fantastic conversation. And now from there, the hypothesis is that the fall, taking a hero or taking an ultimate good guy to a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Hypothesis, don't know if it's true or not, operating hypothesis here, that the fall is another one of our archetypical story structures in which you would take, as I'm defining it, and we're about to talk about definitions.
We disagree on definitions here.
Yeah,
yes.
we got a difference in definitions, but the difference is that I want to be sure that we're talking about particular phenomenon.
Right.
And even if we disagree with what word should be applied, well, okay, whatever, but we can agree on a word for a particular conversation because we want to talk about the phenomenon.
Right.
So
And we can at least agree what to call it, in this conversation or whatever. Right.
So when I was writing this down, my hypothesis was that the fall, and my meaning was going from good guy to bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be archetypically the fall of Satan in its grandest form. But then we also want to know, what is its relationship with corruption, which is something we've been struggling with. Because what is the difference between a fall arc and a corruption arc? And Brianna and I had a conversation on exactly that subject.
Yeah, and to the benefit of people who have not been listening into our conversations, that I've also had a lot more thoughts on that, and my original argument was very poor. So I have a lot more thoughts. But yeah.
Just as a couple of extra notes, that here we are using masculine and feminine is not the same as male and female.
Mhm.
We can have something that's archetypically masculine, but that we have a female person doing that story, and likewise we can have an archetypically feminine story. We can have someone who is masculine embodied, male embodied, do that story. That's not what we're talking about here. That's a subject that we can go deep into, but at least as that note, that's what we're talking about here. We have further notes that we need to study the status of tragedy as that relates to all of this. We're also saying that story structure are not themes. Themes are such things as good versus evil, life versus death, faith versus technology. Those themes could be applied to a bunch of different stories. And then also story structures are not genres, sci-fi, Western, historical, fantasy fiction. That's different from the structure. And then also we do have people who have talked a lot about plot. And I see some questions in the, or some comments in the comment section.
People agreeing with me, Heath. I see people agreeing with me.
So you're saying about you? Wait, what is
sorry,
that?
I'm just teasing. I'm looking at Douglas's.
Look, Doug is in the chat here.
Oh,
So
and then
says,
James Bacon.
I'm curious about the difference between the fall and corruption. Well, that's one question that we specifically wanted to ask Kamran when he gets here.
Yes.
So,
and then what James Bacon says, which is what I believe.
Corruption causes a fall. Okay, it's not the fall itself. Okay. Now, but see what I was going to see. So that's important. So, okay. So we want to talk about that. We're going to go to that in just a second. Sable Phoenix is talking about man versus society would be man versus man. Okay. So this right here, what's being discussed when I see those,
right. That's
different kinds of conflict.
Yeah, exactly. James Bacon is right.
James Bacon is right.
But right there, so he was responding to zero theory to say that the man versus society and stuff like that, those are different types of conflict. So those types of conflict could be theoretically in different types of story structures or story arcs or whatever we want to call this category we're talking about here.
Okay. Yeah. So my take on that is that plot is different from story structure. That the plot is something is that you're talking about the physical elements of things that are happening within your story, which is different from the structure of your story. And there are people like seven different types of plots. I want to look into more about how those relate to this theory.
Yes.
But the hypothesis would be that you could have several different plot or conflict types. I like this conflict types. Let's talk. I'll put this note down here. Conflict types.
Yeah, that's like I feel like you learn about those in like or at least I did like in high school literature. You know. Like, yeah.
So and my hypothesis here is I'll just put this here. This can be talked about later. But further hypothesis is that.
Commoner Sable Phoenix just proposed some interesting ones.
Further hypothesis, if as a writer, you have to choose, well, I can't type, have to choose between story and plot. What do you choose, Brianna?
Story.
Choose story. Yeah, because I think we can come up with some examples of situations where the public is more forgiving of a plot that's bad as long as your story is right.
I'm actually not sure if that's how much that's true. I have this sort of tangential theory that seems anecdotally to be true.
Oh, really?
There are basically two types of audience members, two types of viewers, readers, whatever you want to call it. And there's one type of person who's way more bothered by plot inconsistencies and another type of person that's way more bothered by story flaws. I don't know if it's a 50-50 split. It might not be. It might be that more people are the story kind of person. But I know I definitely know people that are the plot version. I feel like my dad's like that. I have a friend that's like that. And I was talking with her once where if something is messed up in the plot, it just irritates the hell out of them. Like a plot hole and they can't enjoy the story and they'll just rant about it afterwards. Like, oh, that was so stupid. Why would they blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, oh, I don't care. The story was good. But like the inverse, I think people, and also as a writer, you're going to, whatever you are as a viewer, that's what you're going to be better at potentially when you're writing. And so then I see that as like a weakness. So I had to put in extra effort to have good plots because I don't naturally care about them as much.
Well, I think I might be very sensitive to making sure the plot is right because ideally you want to make sure there's both.
Right. Ideally.
But I feel like, especially years ago, my critiques were largely on the plot.
Hmm.
And then when I'm talking to other people and learning more about story structure, I realize there's this other group of people who don't really care about the plot. If there's a
Yeah.
plot hole or this doesn't make sense or that doesn't make sense. But what was important was the story worked. And then I
You're a
realized
plot
that
person.
I think that most people that as a whole on society, they prefer plot. They prefer story over plot. And the example there is Return of the Jedi. Return of the Jedi makes no sense as far as the plot goes. When you're following this through, you're like, what is going on here? This what is going on in this movie makes no sense. And I've covered that in videos on this channel, except for it does everything it's supposed to do as a story. It resolves everything from the story perspective. So it resolves the original series trilogy, everything you're expecting it to do from a story perspective. That's like the internal elements that you are digesting, your story beats and things like that. It resolves all of those. And I think that's why people are accepting of that as a successful resolution of the original trilogy, even though if you actually look at what is going on in this movie, it makes no sense. So that's why
you're onto something there. I think it's probably true that the people like I'm talking about the plot people and story people. You're probably right. The story people, as much as my distinction here makes sense, they probably do vastly outnumber them. I think you're probably onto something.
I think they do. So my preference, a really serious thing you have to work on, I think, as a writer, is trying to make sure that your plot and your story line up. You shouldn't get all your story beats, and then because we talk about it all the time. Like, I know what's going to happen in this story. It's got to be this.
Right.
I got to figure out how to make that happen in this plot in some way that makes sense. Because
I need the character to be in this situation where they have to make this moral choice. How do I arrange the plots so that they're in that situation and it's not artificial? That's the hard part.
Yeah.
There are some really interesting comments.
Okay.
Go up to Sable Phoenix about the 7 story structures. I'm curious to know more about what that is. I don't know if you see that.
Well, the story structures may be the 7 types of plot that we talk about.
Maybe.
I bet that's
overcoming the monster. Rags to riches, tragedy.
Yeah, that sounds like the 7 types of plot.
Oh, it's the 7 types of plots. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Over here, overcoming the monster. Yeah, those are the 7 types of plot, right? So, and that's why we got to figure out how these plots relate to story structure. We've got to get in there.
Yeah.
Doug says always story here.
I like that. Okay, interesting.
Okay, so yeah, lots of stuff. Got lots of great stuff going on in the comments here. Sable Phoenix says, in my opinion, those aren't 2 different people. If a story attaches to someone emotionally, they'll overlook the logical inconsistencies. I agree with that. It's just the different. It's just that different emotions appeal to different people. I think that's fair. I think that I think that's what I would say when we talk about Star Wars quite a bit, because a lot of people know it, and we talk about that the Star Wars Return of the Jedi does that emotionally. That's what I was talking about, the spiritual ingestion of certain elements, and that is actually something that I get from Maxwell Alexander Drake. He talks about the physical side of the story and that he refers to that as the plot. This thing's blowing up that thing, and then they're going to this location. That's all the plot, but that the story is on a more spiritual level. Okay, so that is our theory here. That's where this discussion is trying to go. And where we had there. So I'm going to take that down. I'm going to bring up this thing did you make this, or did you get this from someplace, Brianna?
The little chart that I gave you?
Yes.
You know what? I made it and I have it open on my device, and I'm adding something to it right now.
Oh, you're adding something to it? Okay. So,
wait,
okay, then I'll let you share it then.
Okay, 1 second. Let me click real quickly. And there it is. Okay. I was doing this earlier right before we started, and I realized I forgot to do it. So why don't I go ahead and share my screen?
Can you hit share screen?
Yeah. Let's see if it works. Will it let me share my screen? Present?
I think. Yeah.
Share screen.
Or do I have to allow it or something like
Window. That? Let's see if it lets me. Do you all see my screen?
Nope, not yet, but they do now.
Oh, sweet.
Okay.
Yeah, so this was, do you want me to talk, or do you want to start?
Sure, go ahead and talk, because this is people, the definition, because we got into a long rabbit hole last time about corruption arc versus fall.
Right.
And we need to understand that, and if we don't agree on the terminology ultimately, that's fine, but we need to understand what we're talking about as a phenomenon.
Right.
So this is
And
this is what you created. So go ahead and explain this to us.
yeah, because last time we talked about this, and, some people in the comments were critiquing my take, and I think very fairly, because even as I was describing specifically how I was talking about the fall, I realized it was very incomplete, because I was basically just talking about the fall as the kind of the direct consequence of corruption, and I think that is it's probably better explained a different way. And the other day I had this epiphany where I was like, oh, I kind of see this as like these 4 different types of arcs and how they're related to each other. So these are like 4 different character arcs. This is my hypothesis here, right? That
Yeah,
they're
this is
all
you created this.
right. This is So I'm we're in the program that I made this in, but I sorry, I just lost my train of thought for a second. So basically, yeah. So these are all different character arcs where the character changes, and so for example, so I'm proposing that what I'm calling like the corruption arc is related to the heroic arc in the sense that they would start at the same place. So you would start with a character that is, basically good, someone you root for, but they have, a lesson that they need to learn. They have a moral flaw, like any like any human. And in most stories, most of them are of this heroic quality where they start like this, and then over the course of the story, they learn their lesson and they become a better person. Right? That's most of our stories. What I'm calling a corruption arc is basically we start at the same place, but instead of learning their lesson, they don't learn it. They sink into a darker place. They become a worse person. Specifically, it's that their values are worse at the end. And then over here, what I'm calling a fall arc, I'm relating to like a redemption arc. So I would say both of these kind of start in the same spot where you have someone that's, basically is not a good person. They really need to be redeemed, and they really need to turn away from their ways. And so if it ends positively, right, so it's related like a happy ending, like a heroic arc, this person will be redeemed. They overcome those flaws finally, or they find a way to compensate for them, rectify them. Maybe I should add that in, like overcomes or rectifies their flaws, something like that. Rectifies their what they've done. But then what I'm calling a fall arc is instead of redeeming, they just go deeper. And so usually this is where the consequences comes. But yeah, basically they still they cling and they get even to an even darker place. So another way to look at it, this is what I just made, would be like showing, so let's say we start here, right? We're starting with a character that's basically good. We could go this direction and they become a hero. Yay, they end as a better person. Or they go over here and they corrupt and they become a worse person. And so once you're here, there are 2 other places you could go. So basically, like the fall arc, if you have a movie that's a fall arc, the sequel might be a redemption or it could be a fall. Like, so after you corrupt, you're either going to redeem yourself or you're going to fall and you're going to lose your chance to redeem yourself, basically. So maybe that's another way to put that, is like your chance for redemption is gone. You've squandered it. So I did this fast, so it's not all lined and stuff. But and so of course, you have movies that start here, or stories that start here, stories that start here. You don't necessarily see what happens beforehand, but the idea is that that if it's a fall arc, they're already starting as basically a bad person. So an example of this would be, say, the second Godfather. So I'd say the first Godfather is this. He starts as a good character, he becomes corrupted, and then in the second Godfather, and to the third too, but especially the second Godfather, his fall is pretty complete. He doesn't redeem. There's a really great movie, if you all haven't seen, what's the one about Facebook? The Social Network. I've seen that one being proposed as a fall arc. I think I agree with that. Where this person needs to learn a lesson. Not just learn a lesson, like he's not a great person, but he doesn't become better at all. He changes continually for the worse. I was saying that other movie that we talked about, Heath, what was that? Oh, Scarface. I was describing that as a fall because he also starts in that same kind of a place. Okay. But anyway, yeah, so I think I've made my point. But should I stop sharing my screen or
unless you think we still need it. I mean, I don't know.
Okay, I'll stop. But I wonder if part of the reason why for you, you're putting these kind of together, the corruption arc and the fall arc. I wonder if it has something to do with, let me know what you think about this, but if it has something to do with, kind of archetypically, we always talk about the fall of Satan. I feel like when we talk about the fall of Satan, we're talking more about the corruption. Like when not the corruption, we're talking about the consequences. Like when I think of the fall of Satan, I think of him falling from heaven, right? Like he's getting kicked out and he's getting, pushed into hell. And so I'm thinking about that. And that's why I think there's that association. But I feel like his story probably has both. Like he would have had a period of corrupting and then he has his fall. But to me, it's not the terminology matters that much, but it just matters to me to differentiate between the two, because I think there are some stories that are clearly one and some that are clearly the other. And so I just want to be able to separate them. And I think the best way to explain it is the way I just explained it, where they start at different places. But I don't know. That is my hypothesis.
Okay.
Turn on some
Yeah.
lights.
And so that was the problem with our terminology, because that's why I was saying that I thought there was definitely a moral element to the fall, because in the fall you're supposed to start as a good guy and you end up as a bad guy. Because we had the difference, like if you start as the ultimate bad guy and you end as, if you start as the ultimate good guy and you end as the ultimate bad guy,
Mm-hmm.
to me, I was saying that's the fall.
Yeah, and that's what I'm calling corruption.
And you're saying that you were corrupted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so you're saying that if you start as the ultimate bad guy and you end up paying the price for your sins, that's the fall.
Sort of, but importantly on a story structure level, right? On a story arc level, when I'm talking about the fall, I'm not talking simply about how it ends. How it ends often is those consequences, but I'm talking about, this character basically is having opportunities to change. They're having opportunities to redeem, to become a better person, and they reject them and go deeper. And so that to me is different from a person has opportunities to get better, and then instead a person has opportunities to become a hero, and then instead they become worse. Like to me, that's a different kind of a story that you're telling. To try to be, to just grow like a normal person grows, as opposed to you need to be redeemed. It's a very different starting point, and the kinds of conflict that you're going to encounter, I think, is going to be different. The kinds of moral situations are going to be different, because there's like a strong you're resisting. There's like a resistance that happens in the fall. Yeah. So.
Well, Cameron just popped in.
Cameron,
let's bring him in, and then let's see where we can take this conversation from here, shall we? We'll see what he has to say on this. Welcome, Cameron.
Well, my apologies to both of you. I know I'm late for this. I don't have a good excuse, except that I was dealing with some family stuff that prevented me from getting here on time. So I apologize to you and anyone who's watching, but I'm here.
I don't even think you need to apologize for that. You're good.
No problem at all. No
so what did I miss in all the remarkable stuff that's happening?
Oh, you just missed everything. We solved all the world's problems.
You missed the complete
Well, do we have how much time do we got?
No.
How much time do we got?
It depends.
We're good.
Well, it's how much time you've got.
I'm here since I'm late.
Okay.
What does our audience think? Do we have any feedback from our how much what do they want?
What I sent you
they
in an email,
waited for me,
Cameron?
and I hope some of them stuck around.
You know what I sent in an email, Cameron? I basically just went over that framework. That's pretty much all that we've talked about.
Okay. Let me try to summarize it. Let me try to summarize where we are.
Let me come into the conversation now.
Now
that we've presented it to the viewers.
Right. They've got our opinion. Let me try to summarize what we've said so that we can get Cameron's opinion on it, which is what we all want to hear anyway.
Yes.
Okay. So what we're trying to do here, let me bring up the original note, just as I'm just going to go through the top 3 bullet points.
Yeah.
What we are trying to do here is okay. So here we go. So the adding this conversation to the broader conversation that we're trying to have is we're trying to come up with archetypical story structures. And one of them, I'm hypothesizing there might be 6 to 8. We went into that. But one of them seems to definitely be the hero's journey, because there's a lot of information on the hero's journey as an archetypical story structure.
Yes.
Doug came in hot and heavy last week with this idea of the heroine's labyrinth, which sits
now,
on
isn't that brilliant? Isn't that utterly brilliant?
I thought it was brilliant.
there are insights that I've never come across before as a screenwriter, and that's why I was like, "You've got to get this published." And I'm
Doug
trying
Burton is in the comments right now, by the way.
It's
He's
Doug in the
watching.
car. Well, thank you for hanging out, Doug. I'm here, and we're praising you because I was blown away. But it's very rare that someone adds something new to the vast literature on the nature of storytelling, and Doug Burton has done that.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I'm very intrigued.
All right. And he's going to come back and we're going to talk like in about a week or two. I'm going to email you, Doug. Brand's going to be back and we're all going to talk about it. So he came in because we'd actually previously said that perhaps Beauty and the Beast was an archetypical story. And then Doug came in and threw down with the Heroine's Labyrinth that subsumes Beauty and the Beast and puts it on this level. I think that was wonderful. So we put that up here. My hypothesis, don't know, but the hypothesis is that The Fall is also one of these archetypical type stories. And what I was saying is that what I was meaning by this is how a story goes from an ultimate good guy to a bad guy, or the ultimate bad guy, like the fall of Satan. And then we were talking about its relationship with corruption. So this is the overall position we're trying to put this in. And then and then we've been trying, what we wanted to do is we didn't want to get caught up on a terminological difference.
Right.
We want to make sure we're talking about the actual phenomenon.
I know that was in our email exchanges.
Yeah, right.
That Brianna brought us some issues about a fall, which has a different meaning. So let me hear Brianna's perspective again. And
so,
then I've got some goofy perspectives on all of this that might challenge everything.
Okay.
Oh, that's interesting.
So then what the first question I was going to ask you then, Kamran, was that is there a difference between here is her, so we'll talk about that. But we want to talk about the difference between corruption and the fall. Brianna is saying that we're starting the character as basically good or deeply immoral, and then how the character ends. And she is saying that we have then a heroic arc, a redemption arc, a corruption arc, or a fall arc. And then one of the terminological differences we had was starting basically good to becoming worse. I would have called that the fall, which is what I would say is the fall. She's calling that corruption. She's saying starting deeply immoral, and lots of other people, not only her, right? Yeah, not only her, but that starting deeply immoral and heading worse is the fall.
So that's the Anakin Skywalker.
Exactly.
Arc. It's a corruption arc according to this paradigm. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So according to this, right? Yes, Lucifer and Anakin would be corruption, which I would have called the fall. But according to this. That's what I want to talk about specifically more. Starting good,
so let's explore this.
Okay.
So I want to explore this, and I'm going to bring some Sufi stuff to challenge the entire paradigm. Cool. And when I bring it up to my fellow Muslims, they get shocked by it. But it comes right out of Sufi literature, comes right out of Rumi, the greatest Sufi poet. So we're going to get to it. So help me understand, Brianna, your context. I know you and I have talked about spiritual things and your tradition that you're part of. Why is the fall meaningful to you? So give me an example of a fall of someone that starts off as an immoral person and becomes even worse, either historically or within storytelling that you would identify as this archetype.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think gets this muddled is that the fall is often, I think, the sequel to corruption. Okay. So I was saying earlier, I see Godfather Part 1 as a corruption arc, The Godfather Part 2, and to an extent also Part 3 as the fall arc.
Because he's already a bad guy. He's killed a bunch of people at the end of the last movie. He's fallen into darkness. Okay,
he's already a bad guy. He needs to turn from his ways because things are getting worse. He needs to redeem himself, but he doesn't, and instead he becomes, even worse than he was before. The very thing he's trying to protect, his family, ends up getting hurt, and so it's very tragic. I would think of like an example in like a real life, random example of a real life person, theoretically speaking, would be like, someone who's running a business and they're doing really shady things, and their friends are being like, hey, you can't do this, and they say, nope, I'm going to keep doing it. In the end they get caught. And so that kind of is what I think of as a fall arc. The corruption arc would be how someone starts to do the shady things to begin with.
I understand. Okay, right. So that's a fascinating. I mean, look, I can see that paradigm. I can see how we see that. Use a perfect example. The Godfathers 2 and 3, right? Perfect example of that paradigm. And I want to suggest though that within that paradigm, for that to work, then hidden within that, there must at least be the potential for redemption that the person then maybe screws up, walks away from, drops the ball on, but if it's just a linear line of bad to worse, that's not a compelling emotional story. The Godfather 2 is considered one of the greatest movies of all time, and one of the greatest sequels of all time, that it actually in some ways feels stronger than the first movie, which is great, right? Because within it, you learn the past history of this family, right? Mm-hmm. And I would suggest that the moment where there is the redemptive possibility for Michael Corleone in Godfather 2 is when he confronts his brother about being involved with the people that tried to put a hit on him, right? And his family. And he says, "You're still my brother," right? And we actually think for a portion of it that he's redeemed because he's forgiven his brother for getting along with somebody that put a hit on him, right? But in the end, the shocking final finale is he has his brother killed. And that completes the fall because, we are left to wonder, was there ever a moment of redemption? Was he doing the redemption as to just bring his brother closer so we could take him out, right? I'll give you another example of the fall from what you're describing, because I think it's a very intriguing idea. By the way, I love these discussions. I'm glad you and Doug got involved. I'm glad Doug's in the audience. Brianna, you and I have talked before, and Heath, you and I love the level of this conversation. There's a few people watching, and I hope others will watch it later because, I once heard this recently. I heard this. Someone said, you don't always get the size of the audience you deserve, but you get the quality of the audience you deserve. And so anyone who's sticking around to hear this conversation, even if it's 5-6 people, whatever it is at the starting point, these are smart people. They're interested in storytelling. And so, and I hope this continues to spread. So let's examine this fall thing. So another example would come from Schindler's List, right? Because
I haven't seen that one yet.
You got the Nazi commandant. The actor won an Oscar for this, right? You got the Nazi commandant of the work camp, right? Of the concentration camp. And you've got Schindler trying to give this guy's already a bad guy. He's a bad guy. He's running a concentration camp where people are there against their wills, being forced to do hard labor. Children are there. Bad things are already happening. And there's no law and order there. You can do whatever you want, right? You don't like what this woman says, you just shoot her in the middle of the head while she's talking, right? And because there's no one to hold you accountable. It's complete free-for-all within that thing that he is in charge of. He's already that bad guy. But the reason the fall works is because Schindler says to him, that great story of the power of a king who has a man begging, someone who betrayed him and is being brought to be executed, the man begging for his life. And the king says, "I forgive you." He said, that's power. The fact that the king wasn't afraid that letting this person go would undermine his authority, would, make people go, wow, this king's weak. Maybe I can take a shot at him, right? That's true power when you can forgive, because it means you're completely untouchable. Right? You're not afraid of consequences of letting an adversary go. So he teaches this Nazi commandant, he teaches him this lesson. And for a brief while, you have this almost bizarre comical moment where he's going up to random people in this concentration camp, who are already in a horrible situation. He goes to them, "I forgive you." And it's bizarre, right? But he's trying to because he's a man seeking power. And he's been told this is power. And then then that climax is with where he says, he lets his little boy go, and "I forgive you." And then he stares himself in the mirror, right? One of the most powerful scenes in that movie. It's a very powerful movie. He stares himself in the mirror, and you see he's looking at himself, and his face twists into hatred of himself, essentially, right? As you look in the mirror, and right after saying "I forgive you" to this poor kid, and looking at himself in the mirror, he goes and he grabs a gun and shoots that kid from the window, right? That's the fall. That's the fall. But the fall does not work unless you have the redemptive moment in between. Otherwise, it's a linear progression. That's why it hits so hard emotionally. That's why that actor won an Oscar.
I agree with that. And that's why I was putting it with redemption, because I'm like, those are the same. Those stories feel related to each other in the sense that they both, if it went the right way, it would go to redemption. But then instead it becomes the fall. That there must be something in the, not just in how it begins, but also in the progression of the story is going to be similar. And there's going to be a point where it differs. My light is turning off, so give me 1 second. Let me get some light in this room.
We're not for fun stuff here going on. So so when you come back, Brianna, you deal with it. I want to bring in the Sufi thought in here to shake all this up.
Yes.
But I want to explore this fall concept and compare it to the other part of the graph that you showed, Heath, a little bit. And look at why are we drawn? Why are we drawn to characters that are spiraling down, right?
Well, I was going to ask, do you think it's an archetypical story, the fall, because it's not studied as much, and why is it not studied as much? because we got the hero's journey, we can pick up whole books on the hero's journey, but I feel like I can't just go and come up with some, like, I would love to, like, if the fall is an archetypical story structure, I should be able to come up with a story that's just as well structured, that's just as well developed as the hero's journey, and also what Doug has done with the
Labyrinth.
feminine labyrinth, right? I'm incredibly impressed by that. So if the fall is on that same level, it should have that same, a structure that is just as well developed.
But why? That's what I would want to. Me coming in with my I'm always critical of everything, skeptical of everything. Like, why do you assume that it has to have the same level of structure? Because it could be that it's, especially if we're talking about this as, like I was saying, like, these are character arcs, that these 4 that I'm talking about anyway. These are the ways that a character changes. So it could be that might, that the fall arc or the corruption arc might then be mapped onto another story structure. And that's just part of the puzzle. So I don't know if it's necessary that it would have as many steps.
Well, I don't know that there's many steps required. I think the corruption. What do you think are the steps of? We'll talk about fall, because I think fall is essentially. Maybe it can be broken down further, and maybe some of the people in the chat can break it down further. But I think fall is this line of down, up, down. It's like a lightning bolt, right? Almost like the SS lightning bolt we talked about the Nazis, right? It's down, up, down, right? But what do you think the stages are of corruption? Of a corruption story that's different from the hero's journey story.
Well, I don't know yet, and I haven't thought specifically about corruption, but I don't know yet. So this is a very beginning of that type of exploration.
Should we bring KM Weiland in again?
Well, okay, that's fine.
Did someone come in when I had not yet arrived?
No.
No. This is another person who's got blogs on this.
Kaylin Weiland is a writer who has her own theory on both of these arcs.
Okay, let me hear that so I can engage it, and then I'll throw my.
I was like, we need to bring
earth-shattering different way of looking at things. Okay.
Yeah, and I like it, but I also found it. I didn't map exactly. I was trying to map it with Scarface.
Okay, I've got it.
Map exactly, but it's
not that.
Not that one.
So I've got.
Hers is interesting.
This. So I think this is the right page. We're talking about. She's talking about the negative character arcs.
So she has just for some context. So she's I would say a pretty famous blogger, more in the novel writing sphere, but she also has some books. I haven't read them yet. Oh, one of them's right there. She has a book on character arcs. So some of this stuff is in there.
Manifestations of negative character arc.
Yeah, this is the one.
Disillusionment arc. The character believes a lie, overcomes a lie. New truth is tragic. The Great Gatsby.
Well, one could argue. There's many ways to look at it. One could argue Anakin Skywalker is that because the lie that he believes was the Jedi were all good. When part of what we've now seen in the broader mythology, it's implied, perhaps not as effectively told in the prequels, but certainly shown much more in the subsequent Clone Wars and the things, that the Jedi were profoundly inept in many ways and were corrupt and railroaded Ahsoka and did all kinds of things that suggest they weren't the good guys of the story. Palpatine isn't the good guy of the story, and so this is disillusionment. There is no good guys in this story. There's these corrupt buffoons, who are almost like self-righteous inquisitors that aren't paying attention to reality, versus this guy who's insidiously manipulating everybody. So where's the good guys? And that's Anakin.
Well, that's I would say, okay, so you could say that character believes lie, Jedi are good, overcomes lie, Jedi are not good, new truth is tragic, Sith are also not good.
Yeah, that's it. That is one way to look at the Anakin Skywalker's journey, which is that. And so, and then that continues into a fall journey, which is he's getting worse. He cuts off his own son's hand. You can maybe understand he doesn't know all the stuff that's happening in Star Wars, right? But by Empire, he knows Luke is his son, and he still fights him. He's ready to kill him. He cuts his hand off. That's a continuation of a fall story.
The fall, according to her, is character believes lie, clings to lie, rejects new truth, believes stronger or worse lie.
Yeah. And I want to
go ahead. I'm sorry, I interrupted you. I'm go on.
Well, I was just going to mention this article right here has her overall view. There is another one that exists that she wrote later where she breaks each of these down and like beat by beat, like in the first act, like she breaks it down in a 3-act structure too. So I just want to throw that also exists. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah, right. You should have that. And the corruption arc would be, according to her, character seeks truth, rejects truth, embraces lie. And now
Mhm.
she says Star Wars Episode 1 to 3 is character seeks truth, rejects truth,
Sees
embraces
truth,
lies.
not seeks,
Yeah.
sees
Oh,
truth.
sees truth. Character sees truth. Sees truth. Yeah, I guess, Cameron, when
Well,
you asked me that
then
earlier,
Palpatine is right. That's a point of view. Because if the truth character sees the truth that the Jedi are good, rejects that truth, and embraces the lie, well, that's a point of view. Because when you look at all their actions, case can be made that they're not good guys.
Yeah, and I think something that is interesting because I'm not sure I like the way she words it around truth and lie because it feels a little bit unclear to me what that means. And
Yeah.
maybe I'm putting words in her mouth, but my impression is that what she is implying is specifically a moral truth or a moral lie. So something, because usually when she gives examples, it'll be something like an example of a lie would be, protecting your family is an end that justifies all means. And that is, and it turns out to be a lie because no, it's not true. You act that way, you end up not protecting your family, the Godfather, whatever. And so, and what
or Anakin.
Yeah. And so the commentary I would
Padme, and she dies anyway.
Exactly. And so the commentary I would add on top of that, or maybe replace the wording,
Yes.
I'm not sure, is just to say that you have to think about why people do bad things, which is a whole topic. Usually when it comes to the really big overarching atrocities that humans commit, usually we rationalize it. Like it's no one's going to be like, I'm going to be a villain today. Like people, we tell ourselves
no one
that we're
thinks
doing
you're
the
the
right
bad
thing.
guy. Palpatine is right. Good is a point of view, right?
Right. And so that's why
Sith don't think
thinking
they're
about it
bad
like
guys.
a lie makes sense in that sense, where it's just it's a moral lie. Anyway.
Well, often you could think about this as that the lie is in the sense that you don't have all the information or don't see all the information or don't want to see all the information. For example, again, because I think Star Wars at its best explores all these archetypally and all of its many layers, right? The sort of simplicity of the good evil journey of the original movies, the more complexity of the prequels, and then the very deep complexity of Clone Wars and other things, right? That really shake up what you think is happening here. So it's the Sith believe that they are the good guys. I want to explore this for a second because they believe something that they don't believe is a lie, but I don't think they have all the information. Okay. They believe things that individually are true. All right. So the Sith believe that the fundamental nature of life, and the Force is a reflection of life, right, is a battle. Life is a battle. And, all of life, animals are eating other animals. The strong are overcoming the weak are destroyed. It's a constant evolutionary battle for life. It is, it's what Darwin would talk about, right? This struggle for life. And they see that's the way the world actually is, right? That's the way the world is. And, it's, hold on one second. I'm having some weird connection problems. Let me see if I can keep from disconnecting. I hope I'm not disconnecting.
You're coming through okay here. I'm
Yeah,
I'm getting some weird stuff was flashing on my screen on my end that I could see. There was a connecting warning, so I'm disconnecting something. So all right. So they're not wrong about that, and they're that is the natural world. The natural world, it's like our vegan friends. I don't know if Brianna, you're a vegan. Are you a vegan?
I am. That's why I'm smiling. But you're
good.
good.
Our vegan
don't
friends
get
are always
offended.
trying to tell me not to eat meat, but everything on this planet's eating meat. Everything, even the plants are eating the dead meat of the ground. So that's my rebuttal to my vegan friends.
That's not what vegans argue, but you're good.
Well, that's what vegans in Los Angeles argue because
no,
they're not sophisticated.
I'm scared to meet Los Angeles vegans.
Yes.
I'm scared to meet those
for whom this is a not properly thought out ideology rather than
those definitely exist.
All right, and you come to LA, you'll meet them, and they won't tolerate you and your sophisticated understanding of things, whatever. But nonetheless, they see that the Sith see that, okay, and the Sith see the Jedi as inherently violating the natural order for selfish reasons. The idea is the Jedi are attempting to create this imaginary peace. Well, the Sith say peace is a lie. There is only passion. That's the fundamental principle of the Sith creed, right? The first line of it, right? So this imaginary peace doesn't exist anywhere in the world except this sort of fake social creation of that the Jedi are promoting. And how do they keep? Remember, they call themselves the keepers of the peace. We're not soldiers; we're keepers of the peace, right? So how do they keep this peace? By being on top, by being the guys who define what the society is, and they get to define what your role is. So they get to say, "You will not be trained by us." Because we have deemed you unworthy or too dangerous, or there's these judgmental dudes who have secured power for themselves. That's the Sith argument. They're like, this isn't democracy. This isn't equality. Equality, true democracy of nature, is the strong struggle to make the best out of themselves. And in the process, they become better and life gets better and the force gets stronger. And that's a good thing. So their entire perspective is everyone should be pursuing their own personal interest because that's natural. And the world, the universe, the galaxy is better because of it. Because through the competition of that, the best will rise to the top and everyone benefits from that. That's the argument. The problem, but then these people, they'll kill.
Make a great argument in defense of the Sith.
So where is the thing? So that sounds right. Yet we don't identify. Most of us don't identify with the Sith. Most of us don't think the Emperor's a good guy, right? And and so why is that? It's because they are correct about each individual point that they've made. But one of the things that's revealed in the Clone Wars is the Sith don't believe in an afterlife. Now it's clear the Jedi don't really believe in one either. They both seem to have this amorphous idea of becoming one with the Force. Well, I don't know what that means, right? But it's like this almost like a Buddhist nirvana thing where you lose an individual identity. Both believe that, and however, both of them don't have the exact storyline. As we discover, there is an afterlife. They just don't know about it. Obi-Wan experiences it. Qui-Gon experiences. There is an afterlife where you have individual identity. They just don't know about it. And so because of that, because they don't have all the information, the Sith don't understand the context in which consciousness is evolving in the material plane of the galaxy, in which the Force is doing that. And so by keeping at the level of animalistic battle for strength, because they don't see the higher picture that there's an afterlife where I guess what you take, it's what Yoda says, you only take what you bring with you, right? Into the tree, right? It's the afterlife. What you are goes into the afterlife and experiences a heaven or hell type afterlife. And even in the Star Wars universe, right? The Emperor ends up in a sort of dark part of the Force, he's held there when he's dead. He's trapped down there, right? So it's a hell force. So because they don't understand that, they don't get why there is this thing, and that the idea of life is of consciousness evolving to maturity is to transcend the cycle of the struggle for being the best, right? And because they don't have all the information, they're not following a lie. Everything they said is true. It's incomplete.
Yeah, that's interesting because I feel like you're talking about like the information that they have being incomplete versus when I think about a lie, I'm thinking more about like, this is why I kind of don't like her phrasing it, because I feel like it's probably clearer when you're talking about corruption and fall to say something like, your values are getting better or worse, something like that seems to me to be clearer language. But I don't know. What do you think?
Well, what do you, I mean, again, but then that comes down to what his values are getting better or worse, right?
True.
For example,
It's subjective.
I'm a carnivore, you're a vegan. Each of us has a value system about life, about the morality of taking life for food, that are not compatible value systems.
Well, it's possible we actually have much more similar ones than we think, but we're applying them in different ways.
I mean, if we break down to the principles of it, right? If we break down to the actual principles of it, and again, what are the informations and the what are the presumptions and the lack of, we don't have all the information, neither you nor I, about how the universe. I'll give you actually a Sufi answer to the vegans, which
sure.
The Sufi answer to the vegans, because the Sufis will eat meat, right? And the Sufi answer to the vegans is like, our friends don't understand. When we are incorporating the animal parts into our body, we're actually elevating the animal spirit into a higher evolutionary form. We're raising them higher to the next stage. And that one does not have to accept that paradigm, but if that information point is true, that changes the dynamic of whether it's cruel to take an animal life, right? It just changes the dynamic of what's happening there, but we don't have the information. That's one possible information that alters our dynamic of how to interpret events.
I'm having this secondary thought. Sorry, I don't know if you were trying to break in, Heath, but I have this other thought.
I want to bring it back to a more concrete level, but go ahead, do your.
There's nothing more concrete than eating hamburgers, brother. More concrete than that.
Because I wonder if when we're talking about this in a storytelling perspective, because you think about, because I have this thought about morality, which is where you have sort of your basic, sort of universally accepted values, and then the kind of applications of them is where we get into this complicated area where we all disagree with each other, right? Yes. Something fundamental would be like, being kind and not being cruel, or respecting people, like whatever it is, like not murdering, like really basic things, don't lie. So we have these kinds of, don't take advantage of people. These are the ones that we all agree on, basically.
In principle, but in practice, nobody agrees on the practicalities of that.
Right, but I'm saying that maybe when we're talking about in a corruption arc and a storytelling
Yes.
thing, or a fall arc, that we can identify it as one of these, not because the person has one specific belief that changes to another one, but that these more fundamental things change, the ones that we all kind of agree on. Oh, that's definitely worse. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like, does it seem like that is usually, we consider it a negative character arc in this sense when it's one of those values that we all agree on, even if the morality gets murky sometimes. We can kind of tell, yeah, okay, even if I don't know what I think about this specific application of morality, I can agree that this character is a worse person.
Well, I mean, if we use the examples that we have,
Mhm.
that we use, for example, like Schindler's List, he goes from being a tyrannical,
Mhm.
manager of a concentration camp into a
Mhm.
guy who's just shooting children in the head, just for the hell of it, right?
Right.
Just
All that's bad. No one,
and
I think, disagrees on that.
you'll always find somebody. It's
Except
there's
for
always
people
somebody.
doing
Ah,
that.
cool 'em, cool
Yeah.
'em. I mean, there's always somebody, right? And so
Except for the
as I'm
people.
learning in my debates on YouTube, there's always somebody. There's always somebody out there with the craziest
Fair
opinion
point.
So
presented to you. But yeah, so okay, let me maybe jostle this conversation with that Sufi perspective that I keep hinting
okay,
at.
okay, yes. If you cover that, yes, let's do that.
All right, so a very famous Sufi poet, many people in America have heard him, Rumi, the great poet Rumi, right? He wrote this incredible, his sort of life work was this epic, sort of like the Iliad or the Odyssey, this epic multi-volume poem called the Masnavi, right?
I don't
And
know about this. I have to look this
oh,
up.
you should.
All right,
You can
making a
get the
note.
translations. There's some wonderful. Oxford University has great translations. You can get on Amazon. I think it's spelled in Amazon Mathnawy. Rumi's Matnawi, right? It can be spelled Masnawi or Matnawi depending on the pronunciation. But you can find it on Barnes Noble's or Amazon. But yeah, it's worth getting these poems because what it is it's his life epic. It's a mystical poem. It represents all of his Sufi philosophy. Some people, it's the for a Muslim, it's the closest human effort to try to bring together all of Sufism into a few volumes. Because what it does is it's vignettes. It's vignettes of different poems and different stories, almost like the Arabian Nights have all these different stories layered in, and the idea is each is teaching you, an aspect of the mystical journey. And so there's a specific thing. There's the story of it's like in volume 2 somewhere, right? But there's a story of Moses and Pharaoh. Now, Moses and Pharaoh in the biblical context, right? But it actually is very central in Islam. Moses is the most important figure in the Quran, actually. Muhammad is only mentioned 4 times, I believe. Jesus is mentioned something like 100 times, and Moses is mentioned several hundred times. Moses is the most significant figure in the Quran, right? And that's interesting for a lot of people. Moses is the most important figure in the Quran. And his story pops up in many different contexts all over. But because Moses is the most sort of archetypal figure in the Quran, the Pharaoh in the Islamic tradition represents the archetype of evil, right?
Interesting.
The Pharaoh represents hubris and arrogance and cruelty. He's killing all these children for no reason, and he sees all the miracles of God and defies him anyway, and thinks he's equal to God. And so he is held out throughout Islamic history as the human embodiment of evil. He's like this Darth Sidious in the Islamic world. The Pharaoh is that archetype. So there's this fascinating section in Rumi's Masnavi where you get to see it from Pharaoh's point of view. And it's a shocking perspective because the way he's introduced is you see Pharaoh on his knees praying to God and saying, God, I love you. You're my best friend. I want to serve you for all eternity. And I don't want to play this role. You've told me, like the angels have come and said, Moses is coming back from the desert and he's gonna reveal himself, and I have to reject him and abuse him and punish his people and do all these terrible things. And he says, I don't want to do it. I don't want the job. I believe in you. I have absolute faith in you. Why are you asking me to do this? Right? And God responds saying, your love for me is like this intimate bridal thing. It's just between you and me. Nobody else will know about it. In fact, nobody is going to know about it. Right? I need you to play this role in the story. I need you to play this role in the story of the bad guy. I need you to create problems for Moses. I need you to reject him. I need you to torture his people because you're the catalyst of these world events. They cannot happen unless there's an obstacle, unless there's an oppositional figure. So I'm telling you to play this role in the story, even though you don't want to do it, and play it to the hilt. If you love me, you will be the best tyrannical Pharaoh ever, right? So everyone's going to believe you're this bad guy, right? And that's the role. And So here's the Sufi perspective of the story, because the Sufi perspective is that all of creation is a manifestation of the divine qualities. There's no duality. This is the Sufi critique of actually the duality of the Abrahamic, the mainstream Abrahamic religious.
I understand why it would have that story then, huh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, the Sufis critique the traditional, even Muslim things of thinking of the world as dualistic. It's God versus the devil, right? When Sufis like there's only this reality. Al-Haq is the primary name of God, which means the reality that Sufis use. And so there's only this one reality which takes all these forms. And it's all a story being told by God who's playing all the roles. Like it's playing the role of Brianna, it's playing the role of Heath, it's playing the role of Cameron. It's just one being playing all these different roles, in a play of its own creation, right? And so when duality vanishes, evil inherently vanishes because each character is playing the role that they need to be to make the story work.
So from your perspective as a Sufi Muslim, do you see these kinds of stories as being almost like each character is like playing a necessary role or something like that? Or
well, that's the whole point. And that's where the genius of the line. And there's some great lines, even some people don't like the prequels. I like the prequels for the most part. And there's some great lines. And that whole city, the one most important line to me in all of the prequels is, where Palpatine says, good is a point of view. He's right. Because everybody thinks they're the hero. And that brings us to the fall stories, right? And, let's explore them. Because if everybody thinks they're a hero, what does the corruption story mean? And what does the fall mean? From the point of view of the character who is going on this downward trek. If they're the hero of the story, to them, this fall is a hero's journey. Like Pharaoh's fall is a hero's journey for him. He's the heroic guy that
until he
allowed Moses to do it.
Until they get to the end, and then they meet consequences potentially.
They meet consequences. That's part of the story, and then the story continues in the next life, right?
That's concretizing it where I was planning on going. Okay, so let's try that. Let's say, okay, so someone comes to you, Cameron, says, I want to write this script, which is actually one of the ones that or we're going to do this movie, which is like the fall. I mentioned the fall, so maybe this is one I want to do. And so you say, I'm going to start with this guy who's going to be this terrific hero, whether this is Lucifer before the fall, or this is Anakin Skywalker as the greatest Jedi Knight, or it's Galahad. Galahad doesn't fall, but let's say it's Galahad like Knight of the Round Table.
Yes.
And then you can say, all right, he's got this character flaw. Now, actually, I do kind of think that perhaps you're asking about structure, that, okay, we're going to start with a basically good guy, but even if you're going to end up with a hero going on the hero's journey, he's got some kind of problem he's got to overcome. Right. So you're still going to have some type of problem he's got to overcome. And yes, no, is he going to overcome this problem? And I'm like, no, the story that I want to tell is that he doesn't overcome this problem. And instead he ends up as the ultimate evil. So I'm going to take this. I want to start with this ultimate good guy. And then by the end of the story, I want him to be the ultimate bad guy. And I want the audience to accept that as a story. So the hypothesis is that it's possible to be done. That
audiences have always accepted that, like you said, archetypal.
Okay, so then what is it? Okay, but it's not as well developed. So what do you have to do? So like, would you agree that that Anakin Skywalker's arc could have been that from ultimate good guy to you end up the Dark Lord of the Sith?
Well, that is part of the arc.
Okay. But
I mean, it may have been the story there. That's enough. That's
right.
That's
the story there. Yeah. Okay, you stop the story there. So now we can, and Brianna I have argued that perhaps the prequels were not done well, and that particular arc could have been done better. So, but if someone comes to you and says, "This is the story I'm trying to tell this story," what do they have to do in order to get the audience to accept that and not just reject it?
What they have to do is what Milton does in Paradise Lost, right? Satan's the most interesting character.
Reading that one now, now.
I mean, Satan's the most interesting character, right? Because he has a point of view. He has a point of. It's not his point of view is he's telling the angels, we were created in this wondrous thing, and now that we are being forced to serve these barbaric lower creatures. I mean, what kind of God is this, right? What kind of God is this? That's subverting. We talk about how we hate when people in Hollywood subvert our expectations. Lucifer is getting his expectations subverted. He's like, dude, you made me the highest of all angels, the most beloved, glorious, beautiful thing, and you're putting me beneath this piece of mud that's going to bring suffering and injustice and cruelty and murder each other. It's like, it's going to deny its own creator. I mean, I am beneath this somehow. I am supposed to serve this thing somehow. That's subversion of expectation, right? And so he's the way he's presented to Milton, he's a tragic. He's like, this isn't right. This isn't fair.
You empathize with him more so than God or Jesus for sure. And that's
the point is, it's just not fair. It doesn't. And again, maybe he doesn't see. The interesting thing is that story is also in the Quran. The fall of it's called Iblis, which literally means he who despairs. That's the name of Satan. He's not called Lucifer, but he's called Iblis. So, he's a spirit. There's some debate. The Quran identifies him as being amongst the angels, but he's also identified as a jinn. So he might be a genie. So he might have been, some people say he was the highest of the genie, but those are a different spirit being than the angels, whatever. But he's amongst them. Adam is created. God orders the angels to bow. They all bow. Iblis doesn't do it, because he says, I'm better than him, right? And then God expels him, and Iblis says, I'll show you. I'm going to show you what these people are, and that you humiliated me over, right? I'm going to make them the worst thing that's ever going to exist of all your creation, and you're going to see the mistake you made, right?
Yeah.
But what's fascinating about that is this deep sense, because the name is Iblis, he who despairs. That's the Arabic name for Satan, is Iblis, right? It's also called Shaitan, but his personal name is Iblis, which means he who despairs. So think about it, that's a tragic figure. Someone's full of despair. They've had their hope taken away from them.
Mm-hmm.
They've had their dreams taken away from them, and they don't know how to get it back, right? So this is the person who despairs. The name itself is kind of sad and lonely. Mm-hmm. It's someone that has, when we think of our friends we've all probably had friends who are at the edge, maybe suicidal type, really terrible stuff. We've all had people like that. We know, maybe we've been there, right? It's a bad place to be. It's a place that you want to give these people compassion, but sometimes you can't help somebody. And that's what this character is. That's what makes him so interesting, is that he's that self-destructive guy in the high school that has all this potential, right? But he's hanging out with a loser crowd. He's doing self-destructive things, and you don't know what pain is making him ruin his potential. That's Iblis. Okay. And then you're suddenly obsessed with the character, much more than anybody else.
There's much more about Iblis than there is about the fall of Lucifer, as far as the amount of material there is.
Well, so one would argue that Paradise Lost and all these things are actually derivations of Islamic tradition, because by the time they're written, the Crusades have happened, and you've got Dante's Inferno is a direct take from Islamic tradition.
I did not know that.
Hell, all of it, all the different layers of hell, the descriptions right out of Islamic hadith, right? Because this stuff didn't exist.
How much Christianity is in,
because this kind of ideas weren't floating around in Orthodox and Catholic Christianity in the first 1,000 years of its existence. After Islam arose, that has these evocative images. They're all over the Quran, and they're all over Islamic tradition, the many layers of heaven and hell. The Prophet Muhammad described all these things really in detail. This was such a rich, evocative, imaginal world that the Crusaders, when they encountered it, brought these stories back to Europe, and suddenly medieval romances started rising with this image, and they're all Islamic imagery. When we have the image of you see the standard thing of the devil and the angel on your shoulders, right? That's directly out of Islam. When we do our prayer, at the end of every Islamic prayer, if you ever see the Muslims pray, the very end of the prayer, they turn the right shoulder and the left shoulder and say Assalamu alaikum, because they are greeting the angel of light and the angel of darkness that are on each shoulder. That's not Christian. That's purely Islamic. There's no evidence of that coming out of Christianity. All of this eschatology is Islamic that was brought into Christianity because it's cool. It's cool and evocative. And the Christians thought this was incredibly evocative, right? So that's how we have. That's why I say there's no such thing as a cultural appropriation. Because I'm like,
oh yeah, of course. We're in agreement there.
Dante's cultural.
And we all influence each other. Yeah.
So would you say then that if you're trying to tell a story of the fall, that what needs to happen is that you would suggest starting with the story of Iblis, and that needs to be distilled, and that is your structure. If you follow that structure, you will tell the story of the fall, and it will be accepted at an archetypal level.
You have to understand Iblis.
I think
Lucifer. You have to understand him, and you have to empathize with him. Go on, Brianna.
Well, let me know, Cameron, if I'm correctly restating what you just said. But my understanding is that you're basically saying that an important element isn't necessarily, you're not talking about the structure of Iblis, but just talking about the empathy. That in order to believe that arc, that you have to understand and empathize with, or at least understand the character going on that journey. Is that adequate?
Yes. Well, I mean that's how the story works. The story doesn't work emotionally if it's just a literally black and white story. Why the Silmarillion is so powerful and beautiful. Tolkien's great work. Have you read the Silmarillion? Have you both read the Silmarillion?
I love the Silmarillion.
I tried to once and I got bored.
Okay, well, I would urge you to relook at it again, or even just the first few chapters. Just after our conversation, just look at the first couple of chapters, because you've got Melkor, who is essentially an angel, like these eternal beings that have been created by Iluvatar the One. They're analogous to angels, right? And Melkor is the greatest amongst them, who then, they're all singing.
Oh, yeah.
They're singing songs to Eru the One, the creator god, right? And Melkor goes off and leaves the choir and goes off into the dark spaces of the cosmos alone and starts thinking by himself and starts, he so fascinated by the process of creation that he longs to imitate it. He longs to have the power that Eru has to create, but he doesn't have it. And so, his obsession with desire to be like Eru, almost like a child that wants to be as good as dad, right? And to be like that. And then realizing they don't have the ability. But what he does discover, he has the ability. He may not have the ability to create from scratch. He doesn't have that ability. But he has the ability to manipulate, to change, to evolve, to devolve things. He can take Eru's creation and alter it. And in that way, he becomes a creator. So in his effort to mimic Eru, he creates the orcs and all these things. He takes the elves and corrupts them into orcs, right? He literally does genetic engineering and makes them into orcs, right? And so that, because he's so interesting, Melkor, because all these early chapters are about Melkor and the great universal music, that you're so fascinated by him that he's then, if you stick to the rest of the book, it is his corruption story. But it is using what Brianna said, it is the fall story, because halfway through the Silmarillion, he's defeated by the forces of light and he repents, or at least appears to repent. And he's basically in prison, and he basically works out his sentence. And he joins the other, Ainur gods, right? These other beings in the land of the Valar as this beloved holy being. But then he can't get rid of this desire within him to be like his creator, and so he falls again. And
so he has the opportunity to redeem, but doesn't. So that's why he's saying he has the fall too.
Yeah, he doesn't. He has it's again that is down, back up. Down, right? And then you can't get back out of that one. Once you walk away from your redemptive moment is when the door closes for you. At least
I like that.
The way the mind sees story.
I like that. I really like what you're just saying there about talking about the fall. So as we're defining it here about like that basically that's like a structural thing, because Heath, I know, is like wanting the structure that like the basically one opportunity to redeem, you don't. And once you
that would be on it then, according to what we're talking about right here, as I'm taking notes, that on that list of things you have to go through if you're going to tell that story is opportunity for redemption that is rejected. Yes. Instead of rejected the call to adventure, we are rejecting the call.
It's got to be taken for a bit. You can't just say, "Here, I'm offering you a rose. I don't want it." You got to take the rose. You got to sniff the rose.
Oh, I like that.
You got to love the rose, and then you tear the rose apart.
Oh man, that's intriguing. That's actually
that's where the pain comes from.
Offered redemption.
Offers and appears to take it.
It appears to take it. Maybe partially takes it, starts to take
rejected,
it. Ultimately, but that still follows Kay and Weiland's. It's just using different words. Because she was saying, that to me sounds like accepts worse lie. That to me would be.
Oh yeah, because there has to be something more that they seek. That this redemptive thing wasn't enough for them.
Yeah.
So there must be something else. The worst lie, if you'd like.
Yeah. And then for corruption, so let's try to like propose. I mean, we could go to her detailed thing, but I don't know if we need to. Because to me, it seems like if I'm gonna think about sort of the underlying principles in terms of like what are the things that have to happen in say corruption arc. Say we're taking a good guy to a bad guy. What I see, I want to know what you two think, is that basically, just like with any other story with a hero, there's going to be moral choices that the character is making, has the opportunity to make, and that there will be something in for lack of a better term, the dark side. Not to be too binary, Cameron, but that there's something.
Well, we start with binary, and Rumi says, you need the binary to come back to the unity.
Right. Just to speak generally, that there's something about that is very tempting to them. Let's say it's speaking to one of their ghost, or to their, some sort of wound, or some sort of, belief they have about the world, some sort of desire they have, that may be separate from their need, I would say. So there's something about that that's tempting. And so as they're going through their story, it's kind of like the moral argument is being made, right? And maybe other characters are saying, this is wrong, or this is right. And they're seeing examples of that. And then ultimately we as the audience are still convinced of the truth, but then the character becomes convinced of the lie. So we understand their thinking. We understand why they made that choice. We understand why they've accepted a worse.
If the story works.
In the story work, right.
If the story, the reason why the gentleman won the Oscar is that even though he's such a reprehensible character in Schindler's List, right? It's because even though we can't put it into words, we kind of understand why they're doing what they're doing. They ultimately hate themselves and are trying to find they feel powerless in life, which often we felt, right? And we all know in our hearts that there have probably been moments in life where each of our lives where at our darkest moment we probably shouldn't have been given authority over other people, right? And we all know that in our darkest moments we would have been abusive, cruel, destructive people, right? It's within us. And that is why we are so drawn to it, is because we see that within us.
Yeah, it's like a reflection. This kind of, I think that's why I'm so fascinated by corruption arcs and fall arcs. Like personally, it's just like it's kind of like how horror is like a safe cathartic way to explore your darkest fears. These kind of stories to me are like a safe cathartic way to explore and understand the dark sides of human nature as like a cautionary tale. It's like okay, I don't want to be like that, but what is it like for a person to be like that? And
well, let's explore horror within this. And Heath, let's do this, because horror is one of my favorite genres. I love horror. The very first screenplay that I wrote that got me an agent that made me a professional writer was a teen horror movie modeled on Scream. About
nice.
Dude with a mask with a knife chasing people up the stairs and killing the hot girl. That was and I have been fascinated by horror. And this is interesting because whenever I talk to any of my Sufi teachers, they always get uncomfortable when they discover that I write horror films. Very uncomfortable. They're always like, well, I don't watch horror films. That will corrupt your soul. I'm like, here I am.
There are Christians who believe that too.
Yeah, but here I am. And horror is a very important part of my writing process. So my best scripts are horror scripts, right? The scripts I'm proudest of, right? And it fascinates me because, again, I'm trying, many of my friends in the Sufi tradition are, the Sufis are, if you meet more of us, I'm sort of, there's two kinds of Sufis, right? There are, if you know this, when you find out about Rumi had a spiritual teacher named Shams who taught him all this stuff. And Rumi is sort of your classic, very gentle, mystical, Zen-like, loving Sufi master, very at peace, right? Like Yoda, right? His teacher on the mystical path was Shams. And Shams was a wild man. He was crazy. He was controversial. His whole method of teaching was to shock people. And so there are still Sufis, they're called Malamati Sufis, which is the people of blame, as in they behave in such shocking ways that they become blameworthy in the eyes of good society, right? And so many of us who are artists are a lot of Malamati Sufis, right? I think Brianna, you and I have talked about your spiritual path and all this stuff. I think you're a Malamati Sufi. You like to shock people. You like to shock people, like with your spiritual tradition, all these things. I mean, and that's
I see what you mean. Even though I'm an atheist, yes.
That's part of the shock. And again, we can argue about what the word atheist means and what that actually means. Well, that's another conversation. But so the horror thing, when I wrote, let me bring it all in context here. Okay, so thank you for your patience, Heath, because I'm talking all over the place, but it's all going to come together.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Right. So I was hired by the Turkish government to write a movie about Rumi, this great Sufi mystic, right?
Oh, cool.
And the core of the movie is about how this guy who was just sort of a traditional Islamic scholar, like old school, old-fashioned dude with a beard, write and talk about the Quran and keeping it real straightforward, suddenly meets this madman, this complete insane madman who turns his life upside down and inspires the greatest poetry ever written in humanity about love for divinity and love for humanity, right? And this madman, Shams, who comes into his life, becomes so controversial that the government actually, and it's historical, because Rumi had been a very respected member of Turkish government and society, the Sultan was like, what? This is crazy. I've lost like my best advisor to this crazy guy who's like taking him out into the woods and teaching him all this madness. And so they tried to kill him. They actually tried to kill Shams. And then Shams vanished. There's a lot of mystery about how he escaped the assassination attempt. I have a really great scene in there where he doesn't. It's like an Obi-Wan moment where he actually takes the assassination and vanishes, right? But he disappeared. And then Rumi went into the severe depression during which he wrote his greatest poetry because he lost his mentor, right? So the madness part is the horror story. That's what all my Sufi teachers are all traditional Rumi Sufi teachers. But I'm a Shams guy. I'm a little crazy, like you, Brianna. I'm a little crazy, right? I'm out there. I'm not afraid to be controversial. I have no problem shocking people because I believe my purpose is to wake people up, which was Shams's purpose, is he would come in and say, oh, you think you're so righteous? You think you're so holy? And does this. And then their reaction would reveal they ain't that holy, right? They ain't as holy as they thought they were because how they reacted to the surprising moment was unbalanced, revealing something hidden within them, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of who I am. I've served that role in my life. I'm serving that role in the fandom, Heath. You know, I'm out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm saying, you know, this and that. The fans like, that's not what this guy said, and they're all getting wildly. I was like, that's my purpose. It's like an electrical shock. Wake you up, wake up, time to wake up, right? And so the horror movie, at its best, serves the wake-up call, right? Ooh, at its best, it is by this exploration of these really dark forces, you know, that are unapologetically dark. You know, Jason is never apologizing in the Friday the 13th movies. Freddy doesn't repent of his sins, right? You know, Michael Myers, except in these recent movies where he's a kind of a bit of a loser, but the traditional Michael Myers is
in the better stuff.
He's completely heartless. He won't stop. Michael Myers is so terrifying because unlike Freddy, unlike Jason, he doesn't run. He doesn't chase you. He just walks one step at a time, completely relaxed because he's going to kill you. He has no reason to chase you. He's going to win, right? And so he represents death that way. Death is not running. Yeah. Death is just strolling towards you. You ain't gonna outrun it, right? Death is coming.
It Follows kind of has that feel too of like
It Follows is brilliant, right? And Smile, which was my favorite horror movie last year, right? I love Smile, and it through this unrelenting, merciless, shocking darkness, we discover truths that matter. It's the shock, right? Mm-hmm. So let's look at a Smile. So Smile, most recently, have you seen Smile, Brianna?
No, I saw trailers. It didn't really intrigue me.
You didn't see it? I would urge you to watch it. I think it's one of the best horror movies I've seen in recent years. It blew me away. I watched it multiple times. It's terrifying. It's dark. I won't reveal all the stuff about it because there's a lot of surprises in it. There's a lot of the story's going to go this way. I didn't see that coming at all, right? Not from the trailer or anything else, right? A lot of exploration of mental illness, of schizophrenia, of all these things that are very emotional and about families being torn apart by that. Well, it's a horror movie with this demonic creature, right? And it's really deep. But what I will say about Smile is that this merciless, because you can see from the trailers, it's about some kind of evil force that essentially appears to you in the form of people around you that are smiling maniacally at you, and they're driving you insane, right? Until you eventually die, right? And it gets increasingly terrifying because wherever you look, you see these horrific smiles, and it's a disturbing movie to watch. And it's because it's such a simple thing, just actor smiling, and it's so scary. But what it does is that unrelenting, merciless force that is feeding off of people's fear, and it makes it clear that's what it's doing. It's feeding off of making people uncomfortable and frightened. That's its food. That forces the characters to confront things that they're not willing to confront. The main character has all these dark secrets about family secrets and things they've done in the past they've hidden. And this unrelenting, merciless force forces all of that to come out. It's cathartic, right? That's what a horror movie is. The Exorcist is cathartic. The Exorcist is cathartic because it's ultimately about mothers and daughters who don't talk to each other, right? That's what it's about. It's about, you got a teenage daughter and you're not communicating with her. You need a demon to possess her before you're ready to talk to her. That's what it is. That's the Shamsian thing of a horror movie, right? Is this unrelenting, maddening force that comes in and doesn't stop until it has shaken out the truth of you, which is what a horror movie is.
And so there can be a connection with that, with these negative character arcs too, is that it's
Well,
like it's teaching you something. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but Doug was talking about how, according to his philosophy, the horror was subsumed under the heroine's journey. Often, a lot of horror was subsumed under heroine's journey.
I think he was saying it does on occasion.
Well, Doug's in there. Doug, you want to throw some comment if you're still here?
Because we also, I wonder.
At least sometimes. He said that. I don't think he said that all, but I think that he said that often horror. That he was saying that horror comes under.
And we talked too about a structure of horror too, which dang, I would have loved to throw that by you, Cameron.
Yeah,
I was researching online.
Structure. Yeah, we haven't. I haven't added horror specifically. Go ahead. Okay. You have horror structure?
Whoa, do I have it with me? No,
Actually, I tell you what. Oh, you don't have it with you? Do you?
I have a different notebook, not the one that I wrote that in.
Do you remember some of it on your mind? From your mind? We can go.
Yeah, let's see what we do remember from. Because I know that it started off. It was saying that you're introducing the characters and everything, and that you kind of you need to make sure in the beginning that you show that it's going to be a horror movie. So even if you have your period of piece at the beginning, that something scary needs to happen in the first 10 minutes, even if it's just a startle thing, and then that there's kind of like an inciting incident. I really want to know what you think about this, because this is the most intriguing part, that instead of like a call to adventure like in a hero's journey, that there is a warning and that the character rejects the warning, and by rejecting it they start the horror story basically. So it's you walk into the scary house, something's wrong, you hear a weird noise, and you should leave now. But the character,
I think that's archetypally correct. Let's look at The Exorcist. The Exorcist. If you recall The Exorcist, the event, there's actually a great moment where the movie takes about an hour to take off. There's an hour nothing happening, right? And then it takes off, becomes wild, right? But there is one thing that happens in Regan's house. Linda Blair. And you'll love Linda because she's a big animal rights activist. I'll tell you my story of meeting Linda Blair.
It's funny. People think I'm absolutely so many things because I'm a vegan.
She's a Shumsian kind of insane person when it comes to animal rights, like that she will hijack any situation to talk about that. Whatever, that's the whole thing. So, but Linda Blair, God bless her, Linda Blair. So there's a moment in the movie that maybe people forget, is the moment where early on, where they're settled in their new house in Georgetown, Washington, D.C., and Ellen Burstyn, the mom, sees Linda's playing with a Ouija board. She's like, "Where'd you find that?" It's like, "Oh, I found that. It was in the closet from the last people who lived there, whatever. And I've been talking to Mr. Howdy on it, right? Look, who's Mr. Howdy, right?"
Yeah, that's a nope moment.
Yeah, and I'm talking to Mr. Howdy on it. But and Ellen just laughs it off. And then as she's laughing it off, the pointer on the board right in front of her jumps and moves all the way across the board without there's no hands on it, right? And it's such a shocking little moment. She gets startled and she puts it away. That's the warning moment.
Yeah, yes.
But she doesn't take it seriously. She should have gotten her daughter out of the house.
And so then
that's the rejection of the warning. I found my notes. This is
And so then the next thing, instead of me trying to do it from memory, Heath, why don't you go through? You have.
I don't. We talked about that this is about the difference or the conflict between hope and hell is a component of horror. That we have the driving theme is a need for safety, and that instead of rejection, the call or whatever, we have the failure to heed a warning. But there's also an element here that is the rationalization of the bizarre.
Right. So that would be in the next stage, I think, is that things are continuing to happen that are not right. And the character continues to rationalize them until there's a turning point where they can't question anymore. Like there's no, question.
If you watch Smile, that's exactly the journey. The heroine is a psychiatrist. And so she does not accept that she's experiencing supernatural phenomenon until it becomes utterly out of control. And by then it's too late for her to stop the phenomenon.
And so then after that, I think then it's just like dealing with the monster.
Yeah, we talked about, I got down here, a huge power divide between the monster.
You're talking more about elements. I'm trying to remember the next stage in the structure.
The arc, yeah.
Okay. Well, these are the notes that I have.
Oh, that's okay. I know at some point you get to kind of like a Valley of Despair moment where it seems hopeless, you can't defeat the monster, and then there's a moment of revelation of, oh, now I know what to do, and then you have your final push basically of them finally going against it, and then you defeat it. But then at the end, there's often, not always, but often a little
Well, I mean,
resurrection. Like maybe the
almost
threat's still out
always,
there. But I
almost
think that's all
always a
of it.
horror movie has to at least imply that the horror continues, right?
Yeah.
Even when you destroy Dracula or destroy Nosferatu, it's, there's an implication that that they can return, right?
We
Or something
talked
like
about
that.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that an example of an exception to that was Get Out. I wonder if you agree with that, because it felt like to me at the end of Get Out, it was all destroyed. But I guess, racism.
No, but you know what hasn't been destroyed
What?
is fake liberal racism.
Right. So you're right. I guess
The
that is
phenomenon, the social phenomenon will continue despite
right.
this one person escaping it. And the
That's
original
right.
ending of Get Out, was reshot based on audience reaction. So let's explore that. The original ending of Get Out, which I loved it as a movie. That's completely reflective of all these characters I've met in Hollywood. I love Obama, but I'm actually a racist. I mean, I've worked with these people my whole career.
White liberal racism. That's correct.
I mean,
That's exactly
yeah, whatever. Look, I can't be a racist. Look at my black, butler. I mean, I can't be a racist. I mean, I've worked with these clowns all my life, right?
right.
But,
Those creepy kind of people are, yeah.
Well, that's most of Hollywood. And so that the ending of Get Out, as originally shot, was, remember there's that scene where he's escaped the bloodshed and everybody's dead and he's bumbling out of the estate, and then the flashing lights car comes and everyone goes, because you think, black man covered in blood, right? That's the audience's final, oh my god, cops are gonna. And the original version, it was straight, it was cops. The cops get out of the car, they see a black man covered in blood, they arrest him, and they see all these dead white people, they arrest him, and the final scene is the character in prison for crimes he did not commit, right? And that was the ending. And people were loving the movie in the test audiences. There was and all their needles went down. All their needles went down at that ending because they didn't want that.
It was too depressing.
Well, it was depressing
and too real.
It's depressing and real, but also it doesn't understand the horror trope, which is that you defeat the monster, but the monster is not defeated. Here, you don't defeat the monster because the racism, the hidden racism has won. You
need the catharsis of a victory, but then a little hint.
But knowing that this, so what? There's a million of this. The world is going to continue on in this fake, unjust way towards black men pretending to be their friends and not, right? And that's one person escaped it, right? Just like the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She escapes it, but how does the movie end? It just ends with Leatherface swinging the chain saw, and then it just goes to black because he's still out there, right? Because it isn't over, and that's the pivotal thing of a horror movie, is that it isn't over, which is also comes down to if horror is a catalyst, it means that it's always there to keep us on our toes. Without that, without the threat, we stagnate, which is the point the Sith make, right? The Sith make this point. Without the constant struggle for superiority, we all become weaker and weaker and stagnate and die. It is the struggle for life against this seemingly unstoppable foe of horror that is what gives life meaning. It can't be defeated.
I am so happy to hear that you, as someone who professionally writes horror scripts, like you do that you agree with that structure. So now we can give it the big thumbs up.
I think so far everything I've heard is correct.
Yeah, I think we need to talk more about that because I want to talk more about that specifically, like in future episodes and as we go, talking about that in relationship of what Doug was talking about. Because Doug was saying that a lot of not all, he didn't say all, but I was looking at but that there was a lot of horror that's subsumed under the heroine's journey.
Well, he's in the comments. He's talking about the masked Minotaur. He's mentioning
yeah.
So he's
but
saying
I think that I want to dive into horror as structure because I think we need to talk about that a lot more, specifically in the relationship to these other what its relationship on this hierarchy of structure is, where we place it and where we come up with its structure. Right. So Doug, we can talk more about that too. I'll have Doug back on and we can talk about that.
Yeah.
Because I think we're seeing different elements here on a structural.
Yeah, and here's the thing I have to add is that, like, this kind of goes to the conversation you and I were having earlier, Heath, not live, but like I feel like storytelling is so vast and complex and it has so many facets that, like, I'm always skeptical of things that could box it in too much. We're like, okay, this is all the ways that we can tell stories, because I imagine they bleed you were kind of saying something like this too. Like they're going to bleed sometimes into each other, and these different principles are going to be applicable in different contexts, I think. Probably the deeper you understand them, the more you may see those things. But I don't know. What do you think, Cameron?
Well, I mean, it's because what is storytelling? We're getting down to the most fundamental basics. What is it, right? Storytelling is just talking about ourselves. Storytelling is just about our inner life, right? And the Greeks understood this in their myths, because the Greek myths are literally a dramatization of the inner life. The Eros and Psyche, these are all gods and goddesses, right? That represent an aspect of the human mind, right? The Greeks knew exactly what they were doing. Maybe the common folk believed in these as actual entities, right? And maybe one could argue that the process of imagination made those entities real on some level, right? The whole tulpa concept, right? The egregore, right? But the Greek storytellers were very aware they were telling psychological plays. And that contrasts with the Norse storytellers, because let's use the Norse storytellers. We're going to talk about the fall. So the Greeks have, they have interesting gods, right? They're passionate, and Zeus is out banging lots of girls and impregnating people, and
very human.
Very human, right?
Human with power is kind of what the Greek gods are like.
But they're like developed Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
With all our complexity, with superpowers, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not what the Norse gods are. The Norse gods are much more primitive. The Norse gods are, if the Greek gods represent the human ego in all its complexity, the Norse gods represent the id.
The id?
They represent the reptilian side.
Oh.
Of the human mind. They represent the less developed animalistic side. The Norse gods, that's why I love the Norse myths more. Maybe
can you please go into this in a little bit more detail? I don't know if we're getting too off topic for Heath, but I really want to know what you mean by this, because I'm a huge fan of Norse and Greek.
We're trying to explore where story comes from, which I think answers these questions.
Okay,
so the id, using these concepts of id, ego, superego, the id, and these are just modern terms for phenomena that we know, right? But the id represents sort of the base emotions and thinking of like a reptile, fear, hunger, anger, lust, basic survival things. And then the idea is the ego represents more of the intellectual, we have a mind now, we're human, we have rational thought, and we can control these things or use them. And the superego represents like that spiritual side of the universal mind and blah, blah, blah. But at the most basic level, a reptile ain't thinking about morality. A reptile just lives to eat, screw, I
wish my reptile were here so I could
and survive. I mean, and so the Norse gods exist to eat, screw, and fight. That's what they exist for. I mean, the afterlife of the Norse is not the afterlife that the Abrahamic religions would have considered a good afterlife. It's an afterlife. Valhalla these are berserker warriors that kill thousands of people, right? Mercilessly, and they die. And what is their afterlife? They get up all day and they do it again in the afterlife. They're fighting each other forever, and at night they get drunk. And then they kill each other again, and they get drunk again. That's the afterlife. This is the most base human experience, and the Norse loved it. So let's talk about fall. Let's look at the Northman. Have you watched the Northman?
No, not yet.
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
So maybe
I certainly will, though.
It is worth watching. It is an incredible movie. I mean, the filmmakers. I think this filmmaker is incredible. He made The Witch, which is a superb movie, and then you have the Northman, and it surprised me because it wasn't what I expected. I thought we were going to get a hero's journey. Because that's what the PR and the marketing was.
It's what it showed. Yeah.
It's like, I'm going to avenge my father, right? Who was killed, and I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to, my father was the rightful king of the Norse people, and his brother killed him and stole his wife and raped her and made her his wife and tried to kill me, and now as a little boy I'm come back as this, 20 years later as this man ready to get revenge. And you think this is a hero story of him getting revenge and settling the scores. It's not. Yeah, it is a fall story. It is this. He starts off as a young idealistic prince being taught by his seemingly good father. And then all these horrible things happen that essentially send him into hiding. And he's basically taken in by these Norse raiders, these berserkers, who are shown as murderous, like they're killing innocent villagers. The hero's off there doing that with them. Like he grows up to be this guy berserker who's like raiding villages. And
is this more corruption than
but this is a fall story because you think it's a corruption story, right?
Okay.
because he's falling down. He starts off as this innocent boy, and he's orphaned and taken in by raiders who make him worse. And when you see him as an adult, they're raiding villages and killing innocent people who haven't done anything to them, right? And there's no repentance of it. And then he has a chance. Oh, I can go avenge my father. He finds out where his mother is, and he has his chance of redemption. I'm not going to reveal all the twists of the story. He has his chance of redemption, and then instead he just gets even worse, and he becomes this murderous killer throughout. And it fits because it's the Norse worldview.
Right.
The Norse worldview is that this moment of this redemptive arc is false. That's not life. That's not life. Life is you do the right thing, and life still punches you in the face. So now it's time for you to punch back.
Yeah. Would you say then that one incorporates corruption and fall? Corruption and then he falls?
Well, I think corruption and fall are. I think fall inherently has corruption. I mean, the nature of fall.
See, that's where I go.
Okay, so if you're saying that the fall is somebody who's already bad, well, where does the story begin? If the story begins with them as already bad, then it's fall as you describe it. But if the story begins them as good, they had to get to bad. Were they born this way? I mean, were they like, the Shelob, the great spider that was just born this way? But even Shelob was actually in Lord of the Rings, the big spider, was the descendant of Ungoliath. Ungoliath is this horrific evil spider, which is so powerful that even Melkor, the most powerful of the guy who became the ultimate Dark Lord, was afraid of her. But she was also one of the original spirits. She was one of the original angels. So she started off as light too, right? So in your concept of fall, Brianna, is it just that the story begins when they're already been corrupted?
The reason why I'm differentiating them is because I see some stories that would end before the fall. Like you see some stories where you have the corruption happens and you see the moral consequences, right? But then you haven't seen they haven't necessarily had the opportunity to redeem or whatever. And then you see other stories where they, like you were saying, they're having the opportunity to redeem and then they don't. But I think part of the confusion is I think these two can be part of one arc as well.
Well,
but some stories just do one and some stories just do the other.
Well, that's exactly. Godfather is a corruption story, and Godfather 2 is a fall story. But you could just watch Godfather 2, and if you don't know the previous story, you're just starting off. It's a fall story, right? So I think the corruption is always inherent to a fall story.
Yes, and I agree with that.
Story there.
It always, but it had in some cases it has already happened. Some cases you see it happen.
Yeah, it's the prologue to the story. Always the prologue to the story. Because I don't think anything starts off. Maybe I'm just fundamentally wrong on a universal scale. I don't think anything starts off as inherently what we would consider evil. I think
no, but maybe starting off already corrupted. So an example of that would be like Scarface. Would you agree with the Scarface?
Well, again, where do we meet Scarface? We meet as an adult, right?
I mean the 1980s movie.
Yeah, but we don't see Scarface being abused as a child and what made him into Scarface.
Right. So that's my point, is that we don't see the corruption. We don't see
but that's it. But the story always has a beginning point in light.
Yeah, but the specific arc that we observe is his fall narrative, right?
Well, yeah, but again, that's what I'm saying is that maybe that's just a philosophical point of view, and maybe there are versions of a story. Maybe one writes a version of a story where something is just inherently evil. I think one could maybe argue.
Not inherently evil, but
well, let's take it somewhere. Let's take it there. I think Stephen King kind of implies that the creature in it does not have a corruption. I mean, maybe there's a backstory to it that we don't know. All we know is essentially an alien being that landed on Earth 60 million years ago and has this power to make people hallucinate, and it feeds off of them, right? It's like a vampiric creature. It's a spider, right? And maybe all we know is actually the point of the story where we learned that it landed on Earth 60 million years ago and has been underneath this main town gestating for 60 million years, right? Did it have a backstory before it landed on Earth? Was it a good being in its other dimension? I don't know. We have no evidence of that. All we see is this thing that is inherently destructive, right? It's the question becomes of the serial killer or the serial killer movies. Freddy was a child molester. He was a child molester who was killed by the local people of the town, right? He was set on fire. when he got freed on a technicality after killing all these children, right? And then they killed him, and he comes back as a ghost. We don't know his story.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know. Was he molested as a child? Probably, right? Was he abused as a child?
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jason, he had an overly protective mother. Perhaps one of the more mysterious ones is Michael Myers, because we do see him as a child. We see him as a child. The first time we see him in Halloween is he kills his sister. He's like a 6-year-old child, and he stabs his sister. That seems kind of bizarre, like a 6-year-old child stabbing his sister, right? And the point they make in that movie is that, the psychiatrist says, I looked into his eyes and I realized he's pure evil.
Yeah, and so like one of the things that I think is worth mentioning here is that, again, as I'm defining it, that this fall arc, most villains have that arc.
Okay.
Would you agree with that? Like when you have a hero if you see their side of the story, you may not necessarily see much of the villain.
Yeah, I mean, if they remain the villain to the end of the story, Vader is the villain until he has a redemption, right?
But we may not watch their corruption. We understand that it maybe, if they're a human, most likely maybe it happened before.
Well, it's often in Robin Hood, the Kevin Costner movie. You got the brilliant portrayal of Sheriff of Nottingham, and he says in scene where he's like torturing somebody, he's like, I had such a difficult childhood. Most other people, it might have driven them insane, right? Now, obviously, it drove him insane, right? But he's unself-aware about that, right?
Well, I saw this go by with Doug. I've seen lots of comments go by, but Doug was saying that he thinks there's a villain's arc, and this, I think, is the perfect place to ask this question. Then, how do we distinguish then between a story arc and a character arc? If we're talking about these archetypes, do we need to distinguish between those two things, or are there things that are story arcs that are not character arcs, or vice versa? And what's their relationship?
Well, Brianna, why don't you tackle that one? Then I'll try to see if I can add to it.
Okay. Heath and I were talking about this earlier, and I don't know that I know exactly what I think, but I just feel like you always have to differentiate between, the character development, which you can also call a character arc. So that's how the character is changing, as opposed to, maybe what you're calling like a story arc would be.
I do think they are different. Yes.
Yeah. Like that. So the story arc would be more like kind of the overall structure of the events that cause the character arc.
Because the story will contain all of the character arcs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not one character. It has multiple characters on journeys, including the villain.
And that you can have multiple character arcs going on, and then you also have your plot going on as well, and that all those things together create the story.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so this is I think that see, one of the things that I was coming up with when Doug and I were talking, and I think, Doug, we need to talk more about this, because when he was using some examples,
it's like Doug's basically here.
Yeah, I know. It's like he's here in spirit in the comments. That when he's talking about elements of the heroine's labyrinth that appear in Star Wars: A New Hope, like that story is not the heroine's labyrinth. That's Luke's story, and we're talking about the hero's journey.
Yeah.
So we have to.
But we do have Leia's smaller journey within the story, which may line up.
Which may line up, but I'm saying in simple storytelling,
yes,
which I think is something you're trying to teach us as we've been going through this.
I don't know that I'm teaching. I'm having a conversation. Yeah.
Well, in the broader sense that, okay, don't try to do all of this stuff at once. You've got this, like, for instance, the hero's journey. This character is going on that journey. Tell that story. So in that case, your character story and your story arc are lining up, because I'm not saying simple is bad. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying
simple is usually very good.
You're putting
you can't master simple. You can't master anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, if you start to go more complex with your story, then you're going to end up with trying to weave together a whole bunch of different arcs that could be that every different character might have a different one of these archetypical arcs as a hypothesis. Each one is dealing with a different theme. They're probably all dealing with the same genre, because you might be telling sci-fi.
Well, they probably are dealing with the same theme too. Probably.
Well, I don't know. I think I would say that if you've got if you got 3 characters who are all going to go through the hero's journey during your 10 season TV show, that don't also, if they're all going on the hero's journey, don't also give them the same theme. like then they're going to need to deal with.
Yeah,
a
they might
15
have different arcs,
arc.
but the same theme.
Well, exactly. I mean, the Lord of the Rings. I mean, all of those hobbits go on an arc, right? Even in the original novel, the hobbits go. I mean, the books, the hobbits all go on a different arc, right? They all have different things to learn. Sam has something to learn. Merry and Pippin have different things to learn. And Frodo has a thing to learn. That's what makes it interesting. They all can't be Frodo. Yet the very fact that you have people, I forget which one it was, Merry or Pippin that brought down the king of the Nazgul.
Yeah. That
was
one of those two. Mary, I think that was Mary.
Okay, so but that's the whole thing. Is you literally no man can kill the Nazgul, so it takes this hobbit who's not a man, and it takes a woman to kill him, right? You need that, right? And ultimately, do you need to kill the Nazgul if he destroys the ring? No, but it's great story. You needed that for his arc.
Yeah, and all of this is like, I don't know what the core theme of Lord of the Rings is. I haven't thought about it that much, but it might be something along the lines of like having hope in the face of evil and not giving up, continuing to have hope, something like that. And so so you might say that theme applies to each of their arcs. That's why I'm saying I feel like a story usually has
each of them discovers they have some kind of hidden talent within them that they never knew because they underestimated themselves, right? And that's a lesson. That's a lesson for the people reading the books. That's a lesson for people watching the movie, that you may not think that you are the hero of the story, but you are the hero of your story, and that is why your arc has to be brought to fulfillment.
And that's a much more complex thing to do as a storyteller if you're going to send 15 characters on all conclusive arcs over the next 10 seasons.
Right. Yeah. And usually one person doesn't do that. Usually you have a team of writers.
Well, but actually, let's talk about writing process. So thing I actually do on any show, I'm actually, I've done it on the shows that I've run. I'm planning, God willing, out my new show in the near future, and I'm planning to do it on that. Is, one of the first things, in fact, the first thing I do is I arc out the season in this very specific way. We have a huge whiteboard in the writer's room, and I, as a showrunner, will create a simple graph. On one axis, sort of, I guess the vertical axis up and down, right, are going to be the names of the characters, starting off with our lead character, and then all the major characters that are going to have a role. Some of whom may not survive the entire season. They might die in episode 5, but we just lay them out. They're important to us, right? We're going to follow them. They're not just guest players for that episode. And then on the horizontal axis, the one that goes this way, sideways, right, I lay out the episodes 1 to 10 or 8 or 6 or whatever we've got, 13, whatever. And then I map out every single character's journey, even if they're only going to be alive for 3 episodes, right? Even if we only see them in episode 1, episode 4, and episode 9. I'm going to map out every single character's emotional, personal growth over the course of that season, right? And not every character ends with their thing fulfilled. They might just get killed. They might be whatever. They might be just, they're not there anymore in the story. They fall out. But they have to evolve during the time that they're there to something that's more than where they started, right? That's what I do for every single show that I work on. And that is what allows me to then map that thing, because you literally have to map it. One of the reasons that people get writer's block is that they haven't planned any of it out. They don't know where it's going. They start bumbling around. They suddenly have so much fun in the story that they forgot that they have this other character that you haven't seen in 7 chapters, right? And oh shit, what do I do with them? Bring them back now is going to fuck it up, whatever. And you got to plan it out, right? And so, and that's what I do. And the one constant compliment I get in a world where I'm constantly facing rejection and humiliation in Hollywood, the one consistent
humiliation.
We'll tell my humiliation stories all the time. Humiliated a lot, right? I'm not just being humiliated by YouTubers like, I don't believe what you said about Kathleen Kennedy. I'm humiliated by people that actually matter, which are like, powerful showrunners and writers. Your story scripts suck, right? Even though they're just wrong. They didn't get it. Whatever. But whatever. But the one consistent compliment that I have gotten since I've been doing this, since the very first script that I put out there 22 years ago, is your scripts are perfectly structured. It's because I bothered to do this thing where the character arcs of every character are structured, and then the story arc is structured. And that's what I've been here. I'm actually teaching a class here over at Penn State, right? I'm here in Pennsylvania for another month teaching a class, and that's what I've been teaching these kids. And it's literally shaking them up because they never thought of it structured in these terms. And they're like, "Oh, I was a senior in I never film school. I never even imagined this." I was like, "Well, here's you got it now. So when you get out in the real world, you can write scripts this way." But that's what you have to do. You have to map all this out.
All right.
So that's probably hours here, of which I spent about an hour and a half of. And again, I think that's good for today, maybe. But
yeah, that was incredible. I think that came to a natural kind of concluding arc, though.
We all just kind of.
Yeah, I know.
When
you come to that point,
I had my surprise entry, a little late, but I came in like the diva, at the party who walks in late. So again, I want to apologize to everyone who came at the beginning and said, "Where the hell's Cameron?" I just got caught up in stuff, and I was like, "Damn it, I'm already late for Heath, and I got to get back." And I got back, and thank you for your patience.
And I see, it's no problem here. I see lots of comments. I think what I'll do, because there's all kinds of comments in the comments and things like that.
Yes.
I think that maybe Wednesday, or no, tomorrow's Wednesdays, maybe Thursday or something like that. I think we dedicated a whole morning grind, because I'll just scrape everybody's comments. Okay. And then I'll talk about them, and we can have a discussion, stuff like that. We'll have a whole morning grind. I may not necessarily be part of that, my brother. No. You don't have to be part of that one. I'm just saying, me personally, because I see a bunch of people who are here and who are channel members and stuff like that, and want to talk about things. Maybe I just we just talk about that and all the different things, everybody's comments, something like that, one day in the morning, like Thursday or Friday or something like that. That could make a great live stream one morning to get into this.
I want to share this with the Patreon. I want to share this video with the Patreon. Is it ready to go once
it is? It is ready to go. Yeah.
Yep. You can the link and they can watch the replay.
Yep, absolutely. I'll message you the actual YouTube. I mean, you probably find it, but I'll message you the YouTube link when we are done here. So that it will be ready to go. So all right.
Well, this was an awesome discussion.
This was fantastic. This was fantastic. Yeah, I know. We did. We went everywhere.
Yeah.
So Cameron, your Patreon link is in the description. Mm-hmm. So that if you want insider information, I've been following that, especially over the last month, really. But all kinds of insider information for more than that, but especially over the past month with what's been going on with Disney and stuff like that. The Patreon is the place to be. That link is in the description. Brianna, do you want to tell people where to find you? I know you're not really as active.
You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter, but I'm not doing anything there.
But really, it's going to be next. We'll be here next week again. So really, here on this channel is where this is going on.
Maybe one of these days I'll have a way that you can follow me, but right now there really isn't. So.
All right. Well, we'll be here. So this is where we'll be. All right. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here. This was incredible. I love this conversation. We have had some freaking incredible conversations on this.
Well, channel. I'm going to put it on Patreon. I'm going to put it on my social media. I think more people should know about this, because I think what you've been doing on this channel, again, you are getting the audience, the kind of audience you deserve. Let's get you the size of the audience you deserve.
We need
because you're getting from these comments, you've got smart people in there, and I think
people are really interacting.
Yeah, more people need to hear the stuff that you've been doing. I mean, the work you did with Doug Burton, right? And Brianna, your great thoughts today. I think a lot of people need to hear these things. Mm-hmm. And again, this is one of the more sophisticated channels out there, and I want to give you the viewership you deserve.
All right. Thank you. I hope it happens. It's going to happen. I'm not stopping. So we're going to keep going. So, all right, everybody. Thank you so much. And I'll see you in the morning for World Building Wednesday. We'll be building Rapidvania in the morning. So everybody, see you in the morning, everybody.
See ya.